Pregame.com.
On a wildcard game on Sunday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. Pacific, is Seattle at Washington. Seattle laying 3. The total sitting at 46. Free pick coming up on this one from Bryan Leonard. And Bryan, I was going to ask you, this opened around a pick. Even saw 1.5. Seattle was a favorite of 1.5 and more of a legitimate opener. They're up to 3. And as of Thursday morning, I happened to see more tickets on the Seahawks than I did on the Washington Redskins. And with all the hype of RG3, and a lot of times West Coast teams other than the Niners don't get a lot of attention east of Utah, I was a little surprised to see Seattle getting more of the public tickets than the Washington Redskins in this one. I don't know if you were or not. I mean, after all, they are 3-5 straight up on the road. Everybody's talked about it, but yet they're getting the majority of bets. Small majority, but still the majority.
I think a lot of it had to do with Washington played on national TV, and they saw that RG3 was hampered. With him coming back, and if he's at full strength, I think it's a whole different situation. Sure. But, you know, you take a look at Seattle, and they've done no wrong in the last month. I mean, it's been crazy how good they have been. And what's amazing with Seattle is, you know, you take a look at the quarterbacks. I use a lot of yards per passing attempt, 7.17, whatever is basically a league average. The last 8 games, he's surpassed the league average every single time, and he's done it against good defenses. You can go over those last 8 games and realistically say the better unit for the team they played was their defense over the offense. So he's doing it against some very good defenses.
You know, when I was growing up in the Midwest, my favorite team was the Minnesota Vikings, and I was a huge Fran Tarkenton fan. And although I didn't see it so much in college because it didn't come into play, his lack of size, lack of height, talking about Russell Wilson, it sure does in the NFL. And, man, lately, the last few games, when I watch this kid running around, he's not looking to run to gain yardage. He's looking to run around to let receivers get open. And it reminds me so much of Fran Tarkenton when he was with the Minnesota Vikings. They're both about the same size, and they're both, again, looking to create with their feet for the receivers rather than take off and run with the football, which is what RG3 does. And you're right. If he's hampered like he was last week, not sure if they get over the top of this one. But having said that, and he's got these, you know, this crazy amount of touchdowns passing-wise. I think he's tied with Peyton Manning for the most touchdown passes in a rookie season, talking about Wilson. 17-2 touchdown to INT mark at home, only 9-8 on the road. What say you, Marco?
Well, I look at this, and the first thing that I say is, you know, all the talk's been RG3, Andrew Luck. To me, Russell Wilson's the rookie of the year. What he has done in Seattle, and, you know, again, we talked about it last week. Does anybody remember Matt Flynn? I mean, again, Seattle spent all this money to bring Matt Flynn to Seattle, and here's a guy that beats him out. You know, he's done a great job. You look back at RG3 last week. Only, you know, 100 yards passing last week. What's happening is if he cannot run the football, if he's not that threat to take off, it changes all of their misdirection stuff. You know, the play action, the option game that they're going to run with him, it limits it. Really, I didn't watch all of the game. I looked at the statistics. I saw the game at the, you know, the last few minutes of the game last Sunday. But Dallas, I don't think Washington beat Dallas. I think Dallas beat Dallas last week, once again, with the turnovers. Seattle is a sound defensive team. They're not going to get to run for 274 yards against the Seattle defense. The one thing that you can say about the home and road, I agree he's not as good offensively on the road. But defenses, to me, play the same home and away.
Yep.
You know, and that's going to be what determines this game. And Seattle, by far, owns the best defense on the field. I think they get it done.
The good thing about RG3, when you're talking about in a positive manner, besides the fact that he can run with the football when his knee isn't injured, he does have that 102.4 passer rating, which is 3rd in the league behind a couple of guys, a couple of no-names, Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning. But I talked about this going into Week 16 a few weeks ago, that the team with the most passes behind the line of scrimmage in the NFL going into Week 16, which means they're passing to the running backs or they're, you know, throwing the quick outs to the wide receivers, was the Washington Redskins. So they were kind of handling Griffin with kid gloves almost. Eventually, they're going to have to throw the ball downfield, and that's why I think there's going to be a little regression, as much as I like out of RG3 next season for the Washington Redskins, because you cannot do this forever. They got to take him to that next level as an NFL quarterback, and to do so, they're going to have to throw the ball down the field. Now, not so sure that has a lot to do with this particular game, and if he's healthy, it changes the dynamic of this football game if he's able to run and scramble. But that's the difference. Washington needs their quarterback to be able to scramble for positive yardage. Seattle doesn't need that. Bryan, this is your free pick. Let's get to it.
You're probably reading a lot of things this week about home underdogs being such a great value in the NFL playoffs, and they've done very well as of late. But this is a home team right now that has a banged-up quarterback. Their defense is by far the worst unit on either team. And the Seattle offense has put up a lot of points against some pretty good teams. You take a look at Washington in the last 6 games. They won all 6 games, but they only beat one team that's going to the playoffs, and that was Baltimore, and they had to beat Baltimore in overtime. And as Marco pointed out in an earlier video, Baltimore hasn't played that well as of late. I'm not going to lay anything more than 3. If you have to lay more than 3, all the value is gone. But I think in this situation, if you've gotten by far the best unit on this field is the Seattle defense. And as Scott pointed out, defenses play just as well on the road as they do at home. Marco agreed. So, I got a couple smart guys next to me. I'm going to be on Seattle, but I'm not laying anything more than 3. This will be my play.
See a couple of smart guys? I'll tell you what.
We'll go to dinner after this. I'm hoping somebody else picks up the tab.
We're late Thursday doing this, late Thursday afternoon, early evening. And if you are on Seattle, you can actually find 2.5 if you don't mind laying juice. If you're on Washington, if you like Washington, you better not accept anything less than +3. You can find both numbers, so just shop around a little bit. Anyway, Brian's free pick, Seattle minus the points in Sunday's wildcard action. When we come back, we got one more game. It's the capper of the college football season, the battle between Bama and Notre Dame. That's coming up next right here at pregame.tv.